The research station floated like a silver disk against the darkness of space, spinning slowly in orbit around a purple moon. Inside, Lieutenant Travis Reed checked his tablet for the third time that hour, watching the biosignals from the lower deck grow weaker. Something was very wrong with their alien guest. Lyra had arrived 3 months ago with great fanfare. She was the first of her kind to live among humans for an extended period. The Kryn species was ancient, peaceful, and eager to build bridges with humanity. Lyra volunteered to be that bridge. She was young by Kryn standards, barely into adulthood, with translucent skin that glowed soft blue when she was happy and dim gray when she wasn't. Lately she was gray more often than not. Travis remembered the first week when Lyra joined them in the main dining hall. Everyone was excited, curious, taking pictures. Then came her first meal. She pulled out what looked like chunks of crystal from a specialized container. Beautiful, really, like pieces of raw gemstone that caught the light. Then she bit into one. The sound cut through every conversation in the room. A sharp crack like someone snapping a bone in half. Then another. And another. Each bite released a faint mist that glowed in the air, swirling around her like fog over dry ice. It was beautiful and deeply, fundamentally disturbing all at once. Travis watched people's faces change. The botanist, Kelly, went pale and excused herself. Rodriguez from engineering pushed his plate away, suddenly unable to eat. Even Captain Howard, a veteran of 20 years in deep space, looked uncomfortable. The problem wasn't that anyone wanted to be rude. The sounds triggered something primal in human brains. That cracking noise hit the same nerves as hearing bones break or glass shatter. People's hands started shaking. Some reported feeling nauseous. A few crew members said they had nightmares that night. Lyra noticed, of course. Her glow dimmed to almost nothing as she quickly finished her meal and left the dining hall. She didn't come back for breakfast the next day. Captain Howard called a senior staff meeting. Travis sat in the corner taking notes while the others debated what to do. The problem was simple but serious. They had committed to hosting Lyra for 6 months. They couldn't send her home early without creating a diplomatic incident. But the crew was genuinely suffering. The medical officer reported increased anxiety, sleep problems, and 2 people requesting sedatives. "We need to find a middle ground," Howard said, rubbing his temples. "A solution that respects both parties." That's when Rodriguez suggested the basement. The lower storage area was being converted into additional lab space anyway. It was quiet, private, temperature-controlled. Lyra could eat there without disturbing anyone. "We'll make it comfortable," Rodriguez insisted. "Add proper lighting, a table, whatever she needs." Travis started to object but stopped himself. He was just a maintenance tech. What did he know about diplomacy? The decision was made. Captain Howard delivered the news to Lyra personally, framing it as temporary accommodations while we find a permanent solution. They installed a nice table, soft lighting, even piped-in music. They made it look like they were doing her a favor. Lyra accepted without protest. She just nodded, her glow flickering weakly, and moved her meals to the basement. That was 5 weeks ago. Travis first noticed the change during his routine maintenance checks. He had access to every area of the station, including the lower deck. One evening, passing by the converted storage room, he glanced through the small window in the door. Lyra sat alone at the table, barely visible in the dim light. She'd stopped glowing almost entirely. The minerals sat untouched in front of her. As Travis watched, she slowly reached for one piece, lifted it to her mouth, and just held it there for a long moment before setting it back down. The next day he checked again. Same thing. She was sitting with the food but barely eating. Her translucent form looked thinner, frilier. Travis wasn't a biologist, but he knew something was badly wrong. That night, unable to sleep, he accessed the Kryn cultural database in the station's library. He spent hours reading, searching for anything about their dietary needs. At 2 in the morning he found it buried in a subsection about Kryn social structures. Their feeding wasn't just about nutrition. It was deeply social, almost sacred. Kryn absorbed emotional energy from those around them during meals. The acceptance and presence of others literally helped them metabolize their food. Eating alone wasn't just lonely for them. It was physiologically damaging. Travis read the passage 3 times, his stomach sinking. He pulled up medical studies. Kryn who experienced prolonged isolated feeding showed cellular breakdown, weakened immune systems, and psychological trauma. The studies used a specific term that made his blood run cold: nutritional rejection syndrome. They weren't just making Lyra uncomfortable. They were slowly killing her. He printed the documents and went straight to Captain Howard's quarters, despite the late hour. He banged on the door until Howard answered, bleary-eyed and annoyed. This better be an emergency, Reed. Travis thrust the printouts at him. It is, sir. We're hurting her. The isolation is making her sick. Howard scanned the documents, his frown deepening. Finally he handed them back. This is unfortunate, but we're following proper protocol. She's being fed. She has shelter. We're meeting our obligations. Sir, she's dying? She's adapting, Howard cut him off. It's only been a few weeks. Give it time. Dismissed, Reed. Travis stood there, papers crumpling in his fists. He wanted to argue more, but the look on Howard's face made it clear the conversation was over. Walking back to his quarters, Travis couldn't shake the image of Lyra sitting alone in that basement, trying to force herself to eat food her body couldn't properly digest without companionship. He thought about how humans would feel if someone locked them away from others during every meal, day after day. He pulled up the security feed on his personal tablet. The camera showed Lyra curled up in the corner now, her glow so faint she was almost invisible. She was making a sound, a soft keening that the audio barely picked up. Travis made a decision then. Protocol be damned. He wasn't going to watch her waste away while everyone pretended this was acceptable. Tomorrow he'd do something about it, even if it cost him everything. Travis couldn't focus on anything else. His hands moved through his daily maintenance routines on autopilot while his mind stayed locked on the problem of Lyra. He'd pull up schematics on his tablet, stare at them without seeing, then switch back to the medical files about Kryn biology he'd been reading obsessively. The numbers were getting worse. Her biosignals showed declining cellular activity. Her body temperature had dropped 2 degrees below normal range. Most alarming was the metabolic rate. It had slowed by 40% in just 5 weeks. During his lunch break, Travis sat in the corner of the mess hall watching his crewmates eat and laugh together. Normal people doing normal things, completely unaware that someone was suffering 3 decks below them. Or maybe they knew and just didn't want to think about it. That was worse somehow. Kelly from botany sat down across from him with her tray. You look terrible, Travis. Everything okay? He almost told her. Almost explained what was happening to Lyra. But Kelly was one of the people who'd felt sick after hearing Lyra eat. She'd been genuinely distressed by it. How could he make her feel guilty for a natural reaction she couldn't control? Just tired, he said instead. Too much overtime. That night, Travis did something he probably shouldn't have. He hacked into the station's communication logs and found Lyra's personal messages. He told himself he was looking for evidence that she was okay, that maybe he was overreacting. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. She'd been sending regular updates to her family on the Kryn homeworld. The early messages were full of excitement and hope. She described the humans as fascinating and kind. She talked about wanting to build lasting friendships. Then the tone shifted. The messages became shorter, more formal. She stopped mentioning specific people. 3 weeks ago she'd written to her mother, "The isolation during feeding is difficult, but I understand their discomfort. I'm trying to adapt. Please don't worry." Her last message, sent 2 days ago, was just one line, "I miss eating with people who see me." Travis sat back in his chair feeling sick. She was trying so hard to be understanding, to not make waves, to justify what was being done to her. She was blaming herself for making humans uncomfortable instead of recognizing that they were violating her basic needs. He thought about his own childhood, about the year his family moved to a new city when he was 12. He'd spent months eating lunch alone in the school cafeteria because he was the new kid and didn't know how to break into established friend groups. It was miserable, and that was just a few months of social isolation, not biological necessity. The next morning, Travis went back to Captain Howard's office. He brought more research this time, printed reports from 3 different xenobiologists who'd studied Kryn physiology. "Sir, I have additional information about Lyra's condition." Howard held up a hand without looking up from his own tablet. "Reed, we've been over this. The situation is under control." "With respect, sir, it's not. Look at these metabolic scans. She's experiencing organ stress. Her immune markers are—" "I've reviewed the medical data," Howard interrupted, finally meeting his eyes. "Dr. Patel assures me she's in no immediate danger." Travis felt his frustration boiling over. Did Dr. Patel actually examine her, or did she just look at the readouts from across the station? Howard's expression hardened. "Watch your tone, Lieutenant. I'm sorry, sir, but we're torturing her. Maybe not intentionally, but that's what's happening. The Kryn don't just prefer eating socially. They require it. Their digestive system literally can't function properly without." "Enough." Howard stood up, his voice sharp. "I understand you're concerned. But we have an entire crew to consider. 47 people who are also under stress, also far from home, also dealing with the challenges of deep space life. I can't prioritize one individual's comfort over everyone else's mental health. This isn't about comfort, it's about survival. We're feeding her, housing her, treating her with respect. That's all we're obligated to do. Now, unless you have actual emergency data showing immediate life-threatening danger, I suggest you focus on your assigned duties and let the command staff handle diplomatic matters. Travis left the office feeling defeated and angry. He understood Howard's position intellectually. The captain was trying to balance impossible demands. But understanding didn't make it right. He spent the rest of the day working on repairs in the ventilation system, crawling through tight spaces and replacing filters. The physical work helped calm his mind. By evening he'd made his decision. Travis went to the mess hall during dinner service and loaded up a tray. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Standard station food. He added a roll and grabbed a juice box. Then, instead of sitting at his usual table, he walked straight out with the tray. Down the corridor. Into the elevator. Down 3 decks. Along the hallway to the storage area that everyone pretended wasn't a prison. The door was locked, of course. Security protocol. Travis pulled out his tablet and connected to the maintenance override system. His hands shook slightly as he entered his authorization code. This was it. The moment that would either help Lyra or end his career. The lock clicked open with a soft beep. Travis pushed the door open slowly. The room was dimmer than he remembered, just one small lamp on in the corner. Lyra sat against the far wall, her form barely glowing at all. She looked up in surprise, her eyes wide. For a moment, neither of them moved. Travis suddenly felt ridiculous standing there with his dinner tray like some kind of intruder bringing a peace offering. What was he even doing? Would this help or just make things worse? Then Lyra's glow brightened just slightly, the faintest flicker of blue returning to her translucent skin. Travis cleared his throat. Hey, I was wondering if maybe you'd like some company for dinner? I know my food isn't as interesting as yours, but I figured eating alone gets pretty old. Lyra stared at him for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, she gestured to the floor near her. An invitation. Travis walked over and sat down cross-legged, setting his tray between them. His heart was pounding. This was probably the stupidest thing he'd ever done. Breaking protocol, defying the captain's orders, potentially causing a diplomatic incident. But as he looked at Lyra's dim form and remembered that message to her mother, he knew he couldn't just walk away. Lyra reached for her container of crystalline minerals with trembling hands. Travis unwrapped his roll and took a bite, trying to appear casual. Normal. Like this was just 2 people sharing a meal. Lyra bit into her first piece of crystal. The crack echoed through the small room. Travis flinched involuntarily, his body reacting before his mind could stop it. But he didn't leave. He didn't look away. He took another bite of his roll and kept his eyes on his own food, giving Lyra privacy while still being present. The second crack was easier. The third he barely noticed. And something remarkable started happening. With each bite Lyra took, her glow grew brighter. The blue color deepened, became more vibrant. The phosphorescent mist that rose from her food began swirling in gentle patterns, catching the lamplight. Travis felt something strange in his chest. A warmth that wasn't physical heat but something else. It reminded him of sitting around a campfire with friends, that feeling of connection and belonging. He didn't understand it, but it felt right. They ate in comfortable silence for several minutes. Then Lyra spoke, her voice soft and slightly musical. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Travis looked up and met her eyes. I think I do. At least a little bit. The door behind them suddenly opened. A security officer stood there, looking confused and alarmed. Reed? What are you doing down here? This area is restricted during meal periods. Travis set down his roll and looked up calmly. Having dinner with a friend. Is that a problem? The officer glanced between Travis and Lyra, clearly uncertain. I need to report this. You're violating isolation protocol. Then report it, Travis said simply. I'll be here when you get back. The security officer hesitated for another moment, then spoke into his radio. Travis heard the crackling response ordering him to stay put. Within minutes, 2 more officers arrived, along with Dr. Patel and, inevitably, Captain Howard himself. Howard stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. He looked at Travis sitting on the floor with his half-eaten dinner, then at Lyra, who was glowing brighter than she had in weeks. The evidence of improvement was impossible to ignore. Lieutenant Reed. My office. Now. Travis stood slowly, dusting off his uniform. Can I finish my meal first, sir? That wasn't a request. Lyra's glow dimmed immediately, the blue fading back toward gray. She started to speak, but Travis shook his head slightly. He didn't want her getting involved in whatever consequences were coming his way. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said to her quietly. Then he followed Howard out into the corridor. The walk to the captain's office felt longer than usual. Nobody spoke. The other officers peeled off at various points until it was just Travis and Howard in the elevator, riding up in tense silence. Inside the office, Howard closed the door and turned to face him. Travis expected yelling. Anger. Instead, Howard just looked tired. "What were you thinking?" "That she was dying, sir. And that I could help." "By breaking direct orders?" "By violating security protocols." "The protocols were wrong," Travis said flatly. "They're killing her. You read the reports I gave you." Howard moved to his desk and pulled up something on his monitor. "Dr. Patel reviewed Lyra's biosigns after your little dinner visit. Her metabolic rate increased by 15%. Her cellular activity improved significantly. Her immune markers are trending upward." Travis felt a flicker of hope. "So you see that I was right." "I see that you were reckless," Howard cut him off. "You didn't know if this would help. You didn't consult medical staff. You just decided on your own that you knew better than everyone else and took matters into your own hands. Because nobody else was doing anything. We were working on solutions. Consulting with Kryn medical experts. Researching alternative approaches that wouldn't traumatize our crew. How long was that going to take?" Travis demanded. "Another week? 2 weeks? She didn't have that kind of time, and you know it." Howard slammed his hand on the desk. "You don't get to make that call. You're a maintenance technician, not a doctor, not a diplomat, not the captain of this station. You follow orders. That's how military structure works. Even when the orders are wrong?" The question hung in the air between them. Howard's jaw worked silently for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more controlled. "You're confined to quarters for 48 hours while I decide what to do with you." Dismissed. Travis saluted mechanically and left. Walking back to his small cabin, he felt oddly calm. He'd probably just destroyed his career, but Lyra had been glowing again. She'd been eating properly. That had to count for something. He spent the first day of his confinement catching up on sleep and reading. But by the second day he was climbing the walls. His tablet buzzed constantly with messages from crewmates asking what had happened. He ignored most of them. Then Kelly from Botany sent him something that made him stop. "I heard what you did. I've been thinking about it a lot. About Lyra, I mean. About how we just locked her away because she made us uncomfortable. That's not who I want to be. When you get out of timeout, can we talk?" An hour later, Rodriguez from engineering messaged, "Got access to the Kryn biology files you've been reading. You were right. We messed up. How do we fix it?" By evening, Travis had received messages from 11 different crew members. Some apologetic, some curious, some angry that he'd broken protocol. But all of them talking about Lyra, thinking about her, actually considering her perspective instead of just their own discomfort. When his confinement ended, Travis headed straight for the mess hall. It was dinner time and the room was packed. He grabbed a tray and loaded it up, hyper-aware of everyone watching him. Then he walked toward the elevator that led to the lower decks. He half expected security to stop him, but nobody did. Captain Howard was sitting at a table near the door, watching Travis with an expression he couldn't read. Travis took the elevator down. Walked the familiar corridor. The door to Lyra's room was unlocked now. He pushed it open and found her sitting at the table, looking even dimmer than before. "You came back," she said softly, surprise clear in her voice. "I said I would." But before Travis could sit down, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to find 3 people standing in the doorway. Kelly from Botany. Danny Foster from Navigation. Beth Webb from the medical team. Each of them carrying dinner trays. Kelly spoke first, her voice uncertain. "Is there room for more?" Lyra's glow brightened immediately, pulsing with something that looked like hope and disbelief mixed together. "Yes, please." They came in and sat down in a circle. Awkward at first, nobody quite sure what to say. Then Beth pulled out a deck of cards. "Anyone know how to play rummy?" The ice broke. They played cards and ate dinner, and when Lyra bit into her crystals, Kelly still flinched, but she stayed. Danny grimaced at the cracking sounds but kept dealing cards. Beth watched the phosphorescent mist with fascination instead of fear. "It's actually kind of pretty," Beth said. "Like watching the northern lights." Lyra's glow intensified, turning a deep, warm blue. She looked around at the 4 humans sharing her space, and Travis saw something he hadn't seen before. She looked happy. The next night more people showed up. 8 this time. Then 12. By the end of the week, the small room was packed with crew members sitting on the floor, leaning against walls, eating together while Lyra glowed brighter than ever. Not everyone came. Some crew members still couldn't handle it, and that was okay. But enough came that Lyra was never alone anymore. Captain Howard appeared in the doorway one evening, surveying the scene. 20 people crammed into a storage room, laughing and talking and playing cards while their alien guest ate her crystalline meal in the center of them all. He caught Travis's eye across the room. For a long moment they just looked at each other. Then Howard gave a small nod. Not approval exactly, but acknowledgement. Understanding. He turned to leave, then paused. Read. My office tomorrow morning. Travis's stomach dropped, but he nodded. Yes, sir. After Howard left, Danny leaned over. Think you're in trouble? Travis watched Lyra, who was now glowing so brightly she lit up the entire room, her laugh mixing with the sounds of human voices in a kind of harmony he'd never heard before. Probably, he said. But it was worth it. Kelly squeezed his shoulder. Whatever happens, you did the right thing. The room fell silent for a moment, everyone looking at Travis. Then Lyra spoke, her musical voice carrying clearly. He broke down the door when no one else would. That's what humans do, isn't it? When something is wrong, when someone is suffering, there's always one human who can't just walk away. Even when it costs them everything. Beth raised her juice box. To breaking down doors. Everyone raised their drinks. To breaking down doors. Travis smiled despite his nervousness about tomorrow's meeting. Whatever punishment Howard had planned, this moment made it worthwhile. Sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. Sometimes being human meant being brave enough to act even when everyone else stayed silent. He looked around at his crewmates who'd found their own courage to join him, and at Lyra glowing at the center of it all like a small blue sun. Yeah, it was definitely worth it. Travis stood outside Captain Howard's office the next morning, stomach churning. He'd barely slept, running through every possible outcome in his head. Dishonorable discharge. Formal reprimand. Transfer to some remote outpost where he'd spend the rest of his career cleaning recycling units. The door slid open before he could knock. Come in, Reed. Howard sat behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. Dr. Patel was there, along with Commander Chin, the station's second in command. Travis's heart sank. This was serious if they'd brought in the senior staff. Sit down, Howard said. Travis sat, keeping his back straight and his hands steady on his knees. Whatever was coming, he'd face it head on. Howard pulled up a file on his monitor and turned it so Travis could see. It was a formal report from the Interstellar Relations Board, the governing body that oversaw all human contact with alien species. This arrived this morning, Howard said. Someone sent them a detailed account of our treatment of Lyra. The isolation protocols. Her declining health. Your intervention. All of it, with medical data and cultural research attached. Travis felt his face flush. Sir, I can explain. It was you, wasn't it? There was no point lying. Yes, sir. I sent it 4 days ago. Commander Chin leaned forward. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board is launching a full investigation. They're sending inspectors. Our entire diplomatic program is under review. Good, Travis said quietly. It should be. Howard's eyebrows shot up. Good? We were hurting her, sir. Someone needed to know. If we can't treat our guests with basic decency, then maybe we don't deserve to have a diplomatic program. The room went silent. Travis could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He just talked back to 3 superior officers. Career definitely over now. Then Howard did something unexpected. He smiled. Just a little, but it was there. Dr. Patel, would you share your findings? The doctor pulled up her own tablet. I examined Lyra thoroughly yesterday. Her metabolic rate has normalized completely. Her cellular activity is within healthy parameters. Her immune system is functioning properly. The improvement is remarkable, and it correlates directly with the change in her social environment during meals. She looked at Travis. You were right. The isolation was killing her. Slowly but inevitably. If it had continued another 2 weeks, she would have suffered permanent organ damage. Travis felt vindicated but also angry. Then why didn't anyone listen when I brought you the research? Because I made a mistake, Howard said bluntly. I prioritized the comfort of the many over the survival of the one. I convinced myself we were doing enough because admitting we weren't would mean acknowledging that I'd failed in my duty to keep everyone safe. Including Lyra. The admission hung in the air. Travis had never heard a commanding officer speak so openly about their failures. Commander Chin spoke up. The board's investigation actually works in our favor. It forced us to confront what we were doing. As of this morning, the isolation protocol has been permanently abolished. Lyra has been moved to standard crew quarters. We're implementing new guidelines for accommodating dietary and cultural differences. Furthermore, Howard continued, your actions, while technically insubordinate, ultimately prevented a genuine tragedy. The board recognizes that. So do I. Travis blinked. I'm not being court-martialed? Oh, you're absolutely being written up for breaking protocol, Howard said. That's going in your permanent record. But you're also receiving a commendation for upholding the core principles of interstellar cooperation and demonstrating moral courage in a difficult situation. I don't understand. Dr. Patel smiled. You're getting punished and rewarded at the same time. Welcome to the contradictory nature of doing the right thing the wrong way. Howard stood up. Dismissed, Lieutenant. And Reed? Next time you think command is making a catastrophic mistake, try going through proper channels more than once before you stage a one-man rebellion. Yes, sir. Walking out of that office, Travis felt like he'd been through an emotional hurricane. Relieved, confused, and somehow more exhausted than before. The real changes started immediately. That afternoon, there was a station-wide meeting in the main assembly hall. Everyone attended, even the night shift crew who'd been woken up specially. Captain Howard stood at the front, with Lyra beside him. She was glowing a steady, healthy blue now, looking stronger than Travis had ever seen her. I owe everyone an apology, Howard began. But more importantly, I owe Lyra an apology. We failed her. I failed her. Out of fear and discomfort, we implemented a policy that violated the most basic principles of hospitality and care. He gestured to Lyra. She came here to build bridges between our species. To learn about us and teach us about her people. Instead, we locked her away and nearly killed her because we couldn't handle being uncomfortable for 30 minutes a day. The crew shifted uneasily. Some looked ashamed. Others defensive. Kelly was crying quietly. Lyra stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Captain Howard asked me if I wanted to leave to go home early. I told him no. Surprised murmurs rippled through the crowd. I'm staying because something important happened here. Something that my people need to understand about humans. She looked around at all the faces watching her. You made a terrible mistake. You let fear guide your decisions. You prioritized your own comfort over my survival. The room was dead silent now. But then something shifted. One person said, "This is wrong," and acted. Then others followed. Not because they were ordered to. Not because it was easy. But because they chose compassion over comfort. That's remarkable. She turned to Travis, who was standing near the back. My people have been studying humanity for decades. You confuse us. You're capable of great cruelty and extraordinary kindness, sometimes in the same day. You make terrible choices and then work desperately to fix them. You're messy and complicated and contradictory. Her glow brightened. But you have this capacity that we find fascinating. The ability to recognize your own failures and deliberately change course. Most species, once they establish a pattern, defend it, rationalize it. You do that too, but you also have individuals who simply refuse to accept that wrong things should continue just because they've already started. Danny Foster stood up from his seat. We still hurt you though. We still made you suffer. Yes, Lyra agreed. And acknowledging that matters. The hurt was real. But so is the change. Both truths exist together. Beth raised her hand tentatively. What can we do now? To make it right? Keep doing what you've been doing, Lyra said simply. Eat with me. Talk with me. Let me be part of your community instead of something you accommodate from a distance. That's all I ever wanted. Rodriguez spoke up from the other side of the room. The sounds still bother me. I'm not going to lie about that. But I'd rather be uncomfortable than let someone suffer alone. Heads nodded around the room. Kelly wiped her eyes. I'll be there tonight. If you'll still have me after I ran away before. I'll be there too, someone else called out. Count me in. Me too. The voices overlapped, crew members committing themselves one after another. Not everyone. Travis noticed some people staying quiet, and that was okay. But enough. More than enough. That evening, the basement room was so packed they had to move the gathering to the larger recreation area. 40 people showed up with their dinner trays. They sat in a huge circle with Lyra at the center. She ate her crystalline meal while humans played cards, told jokes, argued about sports teams, and slowly got used to the sounds that had once terrified them. Some still flinched. Some looked away during the loudest cracks. But they stayed. Travis sat next to Kelly watching it all unfold. She leaned over and whispered, "You started something important." "I just had dinner with someone." "You broke down a door," she corrected. "Literally and figuratively. You showed us we could choose differently." Across the circle, Lyra caught his eye and her glow pulsed warmly. In that moment, Travis understood something profound. Humans weren't perfect. They'd probably never be perfect. They made mistakes driven by fear and ignorance and prejudice. But they could also be brave. They could also change. And sometimes, that mattered more than never having been wrong in the first place. The weeks that followed transformed life on the station in ways nobody had expected. The nightly communal dinners became something people looked forward to rather than dreaded. Lyra moved into regular crew quarters on Deck 3, right between Rodriguez's cabin and Beth's. She hung up decorations that glowed softly in the dark, little pieces of home that made her space feel lived in. Travis noticed the small changes first. The way people started greeting Lyra in the corridors instead of avoiding eye contact. How Danny would save her a seat during movie nights in the rec room. The afternoon Kelly brought Lyra to the botany lab to show her the earth plants they were growing, and Lyra spent 2 hours asking fascinated questions about photosynthesis. But the biggest change was in how people talked about discomfort itself. One evening during dinner, a new crew member named Jack arrived on the station. Fresh out of training, eager to make a good impression. When he sat down for his first communal meal and heard Lyra eating her crystals, his face went pale. He pushed back from the table suddenly, looking sick. Before anyone could say anything, Rodriguez got up and walked over to Jack's side. "First time hearing those sounds?" Rodriguez asked quietly. Jack nodded, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I can't." "It's okay. Bothers me too. Been eating with her for 6 weeks now and I still get a little queasy." Rodriguez pulled out the chair next to him. "But here's the thing. That discomfort I feel? It goes away after dinner. The loneliness she felt when we isolated her? That was destroying her from the inside out. So I choose 30 minutes of being uncomfortable over making someone suffer indefinitely." Jack looked at Lyra, who was watching the exchange with her characteristic patience. "I don't want to be rude." "You're not being rude by having a natural reaction," Beth chimed in from across the table. "You'd be rude if you let that reaction dictate cruelty. There's a difference." Jack took a deep breath and sat back down. His hands shook slightly as he picked up his fork, but he stayed. Travis watched Lyra's glow brighten with appreciation. After dinner, Jack approached Travis in the corridor. "I heard you were the one who started all this. Who first broke the rules to eat with her." "I just couldn't watch her suffer anymore," Travis said simply. "Were you scared? Of getting in trouble, I mean." Travis thought about it. "Terrified. But I was more scared of becoming the kind of person who could walk past someone's pain and do nothing." Jack nodded slowly. "That makes sense." 3 months into the exchange program, Lyra asked if she could give a presentation to the crew. Captain Howard agreed immediately, setting up the main assembly hall for what Lyra called a cultural sharing. The room filled up quickly. People were curious about what she wanted to say. Travis sat in the front row with Kelly, Danny, Beth, and Rodriguez. The core group who'd been eating with Lyra from the beginning. Lyra stood at the front, her glow steady and bright. She'd prepared a visual presentation that she projected on the large screen behind her. "My people have been exploring the galaxy for over 3,000 years, she began. "We've encountered 417 distinct intelligent species. Each one has defining characteristics, strengths that make them unique." She clicked through images. "The Morvans are brilliant engineers. The Keswick have perfect memory. The Thornwell can communicate across vast distances telepathically." Then she showed an image of Earth. "Humans have been the hardest for us to understand. Your technological advancement is moderate. Your physical capabilities are average. You're not the strongest or the smartest or the fastest. For years we couldn't figure out what made you special." She paused, looking around the room. "Then I came here. And I learned something that our scientists hadn't understood from a distance." Another click. The screen showed data graphs. "Humans have a unique psychological trait. You possess both strong pattern-reinforcing behavior and pattern-breaking behavior in the same individuals. You can recognize when your own established systems are causing harm, and you can choose to act against those systems even when it costs you personally." Travis felt dozens of eyes turn toward him. His face flushed. "Most species, once they implement a policy or social norm, they defend it reflexively," Lyra continued. "The cognitive dissonance of admitting a mistake is too painful, so they rationalize, justify, and maintain the status quo. Humans do this too. But you also have outliers. Individuals who see suffering and simply cannot accept it, regardless of rules or social pressure. She looked directly at Travis. One person said, "This is wrong," and broke down my door. That single act of defiance gave others permission to examine their own choices. Within days, dozens of you chose compassion over comfort. You didn't wait for leadership approval. You didn't form committees. You just acted. Kelly whispered to Travis, "She's talking about you like you're some kind of hero." "I'm not," he whispered back. "I just had dinner with someone." But Lyra had heard him. That's exactly what makes it remarkable. You don't see it as heroic. You see it as basic decency. The minimum standard of how people should treat each other. And when reality falls short of that standard, you act to fix it. She advanced to another slide showing brain scans. "We've studied human neurology extensively. You have an unusually active empathy response combined with what we call moral discomfort tolerance. You can feel someone else's pain intensely, and you can endure significant personal discomfort to alleviate that pain. Not all of you, not all the time, but enough of you, often enough to create momentum for change." Captain Howard stood up from his seat in the back. "Are you saying that humanity's defining trait is the ability to admit we're wrong?" "Not just admit it," Lyra corrected, "but to take action to change it. Recognition without action is just guilt. Action without recognition is just reaction. You do both. You acknowledge the harm, accept responsibility, and then work to prevent it from happening again." Rodriguez raised his hand. "But we still hurt you in the first place. We still made that terrible decision." "Yes," Lyra agreed, her glow flickering. "And that matters. The harm was real. I suffered. But here's what I've learned about humans. You're not defined by your worst moments or your best moments. You're defined by what you do in between. By how quickly you recognize mistakes and how hard you work to correct them." She pulled up one final image. It showed Lyra sitting alone in the basement, barely glowing, next to an image of the crowded recreation room during a recent dinner, with her glowing brightly at the center of dozens of humans. "This is what I'm taking back to my people. Not a story about perfect aliens who never make mistakes, but a story about flawed beings who can see their failures clearly and choose to be better. That's more valuable than perfection. Because perfection doesn't grow. But humans? You're always growing." The room erupted in applause. Not the polite kind, but genuine, emotional appreciation. Some people were crying. Others were smiling. Travis felt something tight in his chest loosening. After the presentation, people surrounded Lyra with questions. Travis slipped out quietly, needing some air. He ended up in the observation deck, staring out at the purple moon they orbited. Footsteps behind him. Lyra appeared at his side, her reflection visible in the glass. "Needed to escape the crowd?" she asked. "Something like that." That was quite a presentation. It was true. Every word. She was quiet for a moment. "In 2 weeks my exchange period ends. I'll return to the Kryn homeworld." Travis felt a pang of sadness. "We'll miss you. I'll miss you too. All of you. But especially you, Travis. You gave me something precious." "What's that?" "Hope. My people can be cynical about other species. We've seen so much of the galaxy, so much violence and cruelty and indifference. We started to believe that suffering was just inevitable. That all species eventually prioritize their own comfort over others' survival." Her glow pulsed warmly. "But you proved that wrong. One human with a dinner tray proved that wrong. You showed me that change is always possible. That there's always someone willing to break down doors when others are suffering behind them." Travis thought about that first night, standing outside the locked basement with his hands shaking. "I was terrified." "I know. That's what made it brave." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally Travis said, "What happens now? When you go home?" "I tell your story. I show them what humans are capable of. And I help build bridges between our species based on truth, not fantasy. We won't pretend humans are perfect. But we'll celebrate your capacity for growth. And if we mess up again? Because we probably will." Lyra's laugh was like music. "Then I expect someone will break down another door. That's what humans do best." 2 weeks later, the entire station crew gathered in the docking bay to see Lyra off. The Kryn transport ship gleamed in the hangar lights, elegant and alien. Lyra said goodbye to everyone individually, her glow flickering with emotion. When she reached Travis, she took both his hands in hers. The touch was warm and sent tingles up his arms. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. "For refusing to let me disappear." "Thank you for staying," Travis replied. "For giving us a chance to be better." As her ship pulled away from the station, Travis stood at the observation window with Kelly, Danny, Beth, and Rodriguez. They watched until the transport was just a small point of light among the stars. Think she'll actually change how the Kryn see us? Danny wondered. I think she already has, Beth said. And I think we changed too. We learned something important about ourselves. Rodriguez nodded. That we're capable of both casual cruelty and extraordinary compassion. Sometimes in the same week. Kelly squeezed Travis's shoulder. And that there'll always be someone willing to break the rules when the rules are wrong. That's worth celebrating. Travis thought about Lyra's words. About humanity's defining trait. About broken doors and shared meals and the courage to admit mistakes. Maybe that was enough. Maybe being imperfect but willing to grow was humanity's real gift to the galaxy. He turned away from the window, back toward the interior of the station where life continued. Where people were gathering for dinner, where work needed to be done, where tomorrow would bring new challenges and new choices. And somewhere out there, Lyra was carrying their story to the stars. A story about humans who locked someone away out of fear, and humans who broke her free out of love. Both truths existing together. That was what humans did best. Not avoiding mistakes, but refusing to let mistakes be the end of the story. They broke down doors. And then they built something better in their place.